This book literally made me sick to my stomach. Hey guys, welcome back to Book Your Imagination. My name is Anne. Unwind is the first book in the Unwind Dystology by Neal Shusterman. I first became interested in this book after reading Scythe, which is also by Neal Shusterman. And I was interested in Scythe because of this gorgeous cover that portends a dark, futuristic dystopian society. But I can say I don't think I've ever read a dystopian society as macabre as I found in Unwind. This is a YA dystopian novel. It was first published in November of 2007. Here's the synopsis. Imagine a world with no abortions. That is, until your child is between 13 and 18. Then you can have them retroactively aborted in a process called unwinding. Your body parts, your organs are all harvested for use in other people. Technically, you're still alive, but in a divided state. This is the story of three teens who are unwinds. Connor is a typical teenager. He is impulsive, he fights with his parents, and he's barely getting by at school. But his parents have had enough, so they've signed an order to have him unwound. Reese is also a teenager at a state home, but state homes always need more beds, so they've decided it would be better off if Reese were unwound. Lev is the youngest of 10 children from a very religious family who always gives to charity. So Lev has been designated as an unwind as their tithe. 3 kids from 3 different backgrounds with one thing in common. They want to live. I wasn't kidding when I said this story made me sick to my stomach, but this is one of the best stories that I've read in a very long time. If you're an author, you should read this story just to see how he structures it, because he does so many things so incredibly well. The story is told in third person, close third person, and the omniscient or the narrator point of view. Mostly it's in close third person, but because of the macabre nature of the story, sometimes he has to pull it back out of that close third person perspective. All the characters in this book, both major and minor characters, are very well thought out and very well developed. And that was one of the things that made it so hard to read this book. I'm not reading about characters in a book, I'm reading about real people. This world is very similar to our own world with the exception of the juvie cops, a large police force designed to take the unwinds into custody and deliver them to the harvest centers. No one wants to be unwound, and almost everyone tries to escape. Our protagonists know it, the juvie cops know it, so the juvie cops have almost perfected the process of tracking down these AWOLs and delivering them to the harvest center. One of the things that the author does so well is he leads us into these situations and presents a solution that is the obvious solution to the problem, and then he takes us in a different direction. For example, when Connor is trying to escape from the juvie cops, he dashes across a highway, jumps across the median, and a car coming in the other direction slams on his brakes and stops in an effort to avoid hitting him. The driver's side window is down. All Connor has to do is pull the guy out of the car, he's got the car, and he makes his escape, right? That's not what happens. In another scene, a teen girl has had a baby that she doesn't want. The teen father was shipped off to military school as soon as his family found out she was pregnant, so she was left to have the baby on her own, and she doesn't want it. So she enters into an alley with all of these dumpsters. So what's the obvious solution? Dump the baby in the dumpster, right? No, he takes us in a different direction. And this happens again and again and again in the story, always surprising us with, here's the solution. No, we're not going that way. Another thing the author does really well is he layers suspense, and he writes the suspense so very well. An example of this is the legend of Humphrey Dunphy. Now, it's no mistake, his name is very reminiscent of Humpty Dumpty. But we hear sayings throughout the book, oh, it's a good thing you didn't end up like Humphrey Dunphy, or you could have ended up like Humphrey Dunphy. So we know that there is an urban legend about someone named Humphrey Dunphy, but we don't know what it is. And then a character has never heard of Humphrey Dunphy. So we hear the legend of Humphrey Dunphy. So it's answered one question, what is the story of Humphrey Dunphy? But it's raised another one. People, when they hear this legend, go, oh, you don't believe that. It's just a story. So now we know the legend, but is it really true? Then we find out Humphrey Dunphy is a real person. So now we know he's real, but what about the legend around him? Is that real? So we continue to get this suspense layered on each other. Every time a question is answered, it raises another question. Another way the author creates suspense is through the unwind process itself. We all know the results of what an unwind is, but we don't know exactly how people are unwound, and neither do the people of this society. It is a very secretive process, and it's part of the unknown that drives the fear in people who are marked as being unwinds. Later in the book, the author goes through an unwinding process for one of the characters. Now, it's not gory and he doesn't tell us in detail, but he gives us enough that our imaginations know what's happening. It was at the end of this chapter that I was literally sick to my stomach. I could not eat. And the next morning, I was still kind of queasy from having read this chapter. This story is so well thought out and so well crafted. It is really outstanding. If you like dystopian and you have a stronger stomach than I do, then I would highly recommend you read this book. If you're an author, I would say you definitely need to read and study this book. The suspense, the voice, the character development, the plot structure. It is really an example of incredible craftsmanship. The ending of the story was very satisfying, so I am not going to continue on with the series. It's really just a little bit more than I can take, but still, it's one of the best stories that I have read in a long time. As always, this is #JMO, just my opinion. If you like what you see in here, please consider subscribing to my channel, give it a thumbs up, and leave me a comment below. Thank you for watching.